3, 2, 1, recording. Hi guys, I'm just at work and just going through a few comments and messages and things like that I get on YouTube and other places like that. One of the questions that came up was, what's my favorite fragrance house? And I remember somebody, geez, I think a year ago, if not longer, asked me the same question, and I told them I'd get back to you. So if it was you, I'm sorry. I forgot. It happens. But I think, so I've been sitting here thinking about it. Well, for a few minutes anyway, but I was thinking about it all morning when I checked some of my messages and stuff, and I'm thinking about it, and that's a hard question to answer when you think about it. What's your favorite fragrance house, right? I mean, so I'm thinking about it, and it could be a number of different fragrance houses, really. Let's start out with like YSL. I mean, I love YSL. Like everything they release, from pretty much everything in their L'Homme, La Nuit L'Homme line, I like a lot. I mean, even the worst one is still pretty fucking good, right? So, I mean, they're a contender. Dior makes my 3 favorite fragrances of all time, honestly. I mean, Sauvage, the EDT, and the EDP, not so much the Parfum, Elixir, and Fahrenheit. And nostalgia-wise, Fahrenheit's always going to be my favorite, but I think smell-wise and what I'd wear, Elixir, for me, is as close to a perfect fragrance for what I like as you can get. Smells great, performs really well, gets me a lot of positive attention when I wear it, and I just feel good wearing it. So Sauvage is Dior is a contender, right? Calvin Klein and Polo. I mean, they were some of the biggest fragrances when I was younger, really, and they got quite a nostalgia hit, but not as big as Coty. Coty's got a super nostalgia hit for me. Gravity, Preferred Stock, Aspen, and then a couple that are discontinued that I'd love to get my hands on. Avatar is one of them, and Raw Vanilla. I'd love to get another bottle of Raw Vanilla, but the last one I seen was going for almost $300 on eBay, and I'm paying that for it. But yeah, so Cody's a definite contender there. Chanel's never been a big deal with me. They don't release a lot, and it's kind of just for me personally. Same as Armani. I was never the biggest fan of really a lot of Armani stuff. Didn't dislike them, like Acqua di Gio and the whole line is fine. All 75 of them is fine. Code, again, all 90 of them is fine. Whatever. They're fine fragrances. Nothing wrong with them. It's just nothing I've ever been really drawn to. Geez, am I leaving any out? Givenchy. Really nothing really ever drew me to them until this most recent 10 years or so with the Gentleman line. I really like the Gentleman line, but would that classify them as my favorite of all time? It's a possibility. What about Lattafa? Armaf, just because they're clone houses, they're still houses, and they still release some really good stuff, and I really like a lot of their stuff. But again, it falls in the same line as maybe the Givenchy. It's really only been the last 5 years or so that I've really... So, I mean, I guess it really boils down to, if I thought about it, there's 3 that could be my favorite. And that's YSL, Dior, and Coty. I'm going to take Coty out of there simply because it's more nostalgia than the other ones. Although I still wear a lot of Coty stuff, and I'd love for them to release something new or re-release Raw Vanilla. But Yeah, nostalgia wise, they'd be the best one, but that's just it. It's just nostalgia. It's not favorites, right? I mean, and then YSL. What I like about YSL, I find, is their consistency, right? Uh, Ever since I first smelled a YSL fragrance, I think the first one I smelled was Opium, and I loved it. And then Rive Gauche, love it. Like I said, pretty much the whole YSL La Nuit L'Homme and L'Homme line, like every one of them. YSLY, one of my favorite blue, sweet, modern fragrances. You know, I've never smelled M7. At least I don't remember smelling M7, but it sounds like something I'd really like. And but again, then there's Dior, who three of my three favorites, like I said, the Sauvage, the Elixir, and Fahrenheit. And Dior Homme, the whole line is nice. They're not my favorites, but they're nice. Eau Sauvage is nice, but I wouldn't call it one of my favorite. I mean, so it really boils down to YSL or Dior for me. And do I like the fact that the consistency of YSL? Like, everything I smell from YSL is it's at least good. If not great, at least good, right? And performance issues, a lot of their stuff, especially their L'Homme and La Nuit L'Homme line, but I mean, they're generally not overpriced, right? Even at retail, you can pick up most of them for about $150, so that's not too bad. But then there's Dior, man, and like I said, Fahrenheit. Even if I take nostalgia out of Fahrenheit, I love the smell of Fahrenheit, but I also know that it's not quite as wearable, still wearable, but not as wearable as it was by today's standards. But then there's Sauvage. I remember first smelling Sauvage and just being like, wow, who could hate this? Apparently a lot of people, a lot of fragrance people, but the vast majority of people love it. Non-frag heads like us. And then Elixir, like I said, is probably my favorite fragrance of all time. It just hits almost every checkbox for me, right? So, geez, that's a hard one. And these two could change depending on the day. They could change depending on the hour, actually. But as of right now, I'd have to go with YSL, simply for the consistency. While Dior makes three of my favorite fragrances of all time, YSL just releases, a banger after banger after banger after banger. Really good fragrances that most people enjoy. And that are at least, like I said, good. They may not be my favorite. They may not be the greatest, but they're good. Ever since, like I said, my first smell of Opium all the way up to my newest La Nuit L'Homme purchase, you know what I mean? Or L'Homme purchase, whatever it was. I can't remember now. And everything in between. Even L'Homme Blue, which is just kind of most people call it basic aquatic kind of fragrance. It's still got a bit of that YSL class to it, right? It's a little more than just your average blue fragrance. It's probably the most boring and uninspired and kind of blah fragrance of the whole bunch, but it's still pretty damn good for what it is. So yeah, I'd probably go with YSL, but just behind that, just by a hair, would be Dior. Again, Chanel doesn't do it for me. Versace's one I never mentioned. I like Versace, I still do, but again, just kind of more fall into that kind of Chanel things. Like, they're okay. Although the Dreamer is one of my favorites. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with YSL simply for the consistency of the releases. They're not the best releases. They don't smell the best, but they all smell good, and you get a lot of variety with YSL, even just in their L'Homme, La Nuit L'Homme line. So consistency and variety, I'm gonna go with YSL. Is probably my favorite house. I find myself getting more excited to Whenever I see there's a new YSL fragrance, I want to smell it. I want to try it. More than most of the other ones, even Dior. But then also, I'm gonna give an honorable mention, like I said, to Lattafa. Just because they're a clone house doesn't mean they can't be your favorite, and they would definitely be my favorite clone house. But you know, they'd make the top 5. So if I did a top 5, let's say it would be YSL, Dior, Coty, Lattafa, and then I got to go with Calvin Klein, simply based on nostalgia. The last two, Coty and Calvin Klein, but they would be my top 5. But YSL, I think, would, like I said, simply for the consistency and variety factor, would probably be my favorite. So that's it, guys. Just I got to get back to work, so I thought I'd do this a quick little, because I got asked the question. I've been thinking about it for the day, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. Again, it could change, and you know, you may not agree with it. That's fine. You can have your own taste. Tell me your favorite house, and tell me why too. I'm curious. Not just, hey, I like fucking Dior. Well, why? You know, I like Chanel. Well, why? You know, I kind of like to know why. Because I just curious. So anyway, guys, that's it. Peace, love, be good to each other, and be good to yourselves.